Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to my podcast, Spiritual Talk with Christy Godwin and Friends. I am your resident psychic medium, Christy Godwin, and I have the honor of having a beautiful friend here with me. Her name is Phoebe Richmond. She's an entrepreneur. She is a spiritual traveler and a model. If you would like to follow her, please check out her Instagram, Phoebe Richmond. You would be amazed at some of the pictures you would see there. And just know when you see those pictures and you're like, oh my goodness, this is a beautiful human. Not nearly as beautiful on the outside as she is on the inside. One of the most beautiful, kindest people I have ever met. Thank you for being here today, Phoebe.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you. I'm very excited.
So this podcast came about from the other day. Phoebe and I were just talking. We had met for something else, and frequently our conversations deviate from the original subject. And we were talking about when you release triggers and you start vibrating in a higher level. So that's where we're going to start, Phoebe. What does it truly mean to you to vibrate at a new octave in your spiritual or personal journey? What does that mean to you?
Right. So, first, honestly, I just want to go back to the basics. We enter this life with the intention of raising our frequencies, right? And so, as we experience life on Earth, we are going to be going through things that happen to us that either raise or lower our frequencies. These are going to be different situations, different people, different experiences that we have. And essentially, these experiences are going to shape who we are as people. And how we perceive these experiences are going to help us determine our destiny, essentially.
Yeah, Phoebe, what you were just talking about is so true. When you talk about these experiences shaping our path, this is what I work with so much when I'm mentoring people on every day is that, and I also was having this discussion with not just Phoebe, someone else the other day, where when you roll into a situation, I was saying there's only one choice. And of course, this other person was saying, no, there's multiple choices. Okay. So, yes, there might be multiple choices available to you, but there's only one choice that's going to raise your vibration and get you to where you really want to be. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yeah. I definitely agree with you. And I think if you're looking to make radical change in your life, you're going to have to do a lot of introspection and confront a lot of aspects of yourself that are believing things that are unfortunately out of alignment with your soul's truth. And these things can be things such as deep diving and becoming familiar with what triggers you, becoming familiar with what makes you fearful, um, being becoming familiar with what makes you feel shame or unworthiness.
Yes.
And these can all be kind of like bottled up as also aspects of shadow work and triggering things like that. But um, there are a lot of tools and modalities and practices and medicines and healers that can assist you in becoming familiar with what needs to be healed.
Yes.
Ultimately, you do need to be the one to heal yourself and make any changes. So there's a lot of things that you can do to get to a certain point, but it all comes from within you to be able to make any true change. And essentially, then you get to elevate your frequency and hopefully maintain it. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that was what Phoebe and I were kind of discussing the other day is, gosh, there was so much in there for us to unpack. It's frequent. This is how our conversations go awry, is we'll start talking and one thing will lead into another. But, I do a lot of work with people, helping them. And that was kind of how I met Phoebe. I do mentorships and just appointments to help them release triggers. And you have to be able to do the work. I have so many ways to help people, but like Phoebe said, you have to do the work. And also, something that I don't know if you'll agree with this, Phoebe, but we have this mentality that we think we have to suffer to get to that higher octave. How do you feel about that?
I'm like, usually it kind of goes hand in hand from my experiences. However, no, I don't think you need to suffer, but Unfortunately, the only way to get to the higher octave is by doing an immense amount of growth, introspection, and truly resonating with that higher frequency. And a lot of times you can go up and down and back and forth, and it's not always stabilized. So there is a lot of things that you have to do in order to maintain that. And you know, um, there will be things put into your path that are going to force you to step into that power within you in order to get to that next higher frequency or timeline shift, as
Yeah.
some call it. I like to call it. And you're going to lose a lot of things in your life. You can lose people, you can lose your job, you can lose um, many different things that you hold true to your being, but you realize that as you evolve, everything is shifting and becoming more and more in your favor. And so you can't really get tied down to specific things or people or anything in life because everything kind of has to be broken down at first in order to be rebuilt back up in that new octave or higher
Yeah.
timeline or frequency that you're entering.
That is so true. I want everyone to be aware that they think that a spiritual path, a spiritual journey is going to be nothing but rainbows and butterflies. Because, like, yes, I've had this spiritual awakening, but I do want people to be aware that who you are is different than what you were. And it may be what you consider a better version of yourself, but just know that there's going to be some grief associated with that because you're grieving who you used to be. Also, if you're now vibrating at a certain level, you're not going to be attracting the things you used to attract all the time, which is a good thing. But if some of the things you're not attracting are your old friends and they start falling away, that can be very painful. And it's because if you're around people that are vibrating just, and I'm not saying to cut yourself off from the world, or to not hang out with those people. But if you're constantly having them affect your vibration, spirit is going to kind of pull you away. Now,
Mhm.
can you describe, Phoebe, what typically shifts inside someone when they reach a higher energetic vibration or frequency, like the internal physical things that go on?
Oh, yes. It's definitely a lot of mindset shifts, priority shifts,
Yes.
and really integrating a part of you that you're still becoming familiar with because there's a lot of change.
Mhm.
There's a lot of new thought patterns, new belief patterns, always very positive if you're entering that new frequency. If you're ascending and evolving, then it's always going to be a very positive experience, but it doesn't take away from the change and almost the uncomfortableness of entering that and kind of saying goodbye to your old life and letting go. Um, and so, yeah, there's a lot that happens internally, definitely, internally and externally, because
Yes.
your external matches your internal, I like to say. And so, there are many things shifting, but as long as you hold true and know that it is all for the greater good, it's all for your best interest. If you hold on to that and kind of just trust the process, then you're able to navigate things a lot easier.
That is so true. Yes. And I was equating this to when Phoebe and I were talking the other day, I was equating it because, all of us have tried to lose weight at some point in our lives. And I equated when you think about that, when you lose weight, you lose those first few pounds, you're like, came off pretty easily, but now keeping it off, that is the trick because you have to make the right decision over and over and over. So,
Hmm.
yes, you may have reached this new vibration, but you don't just get to hang out there without being challenged of, is this a place where you're really wanting to be? And so that comes with having to make repeated decisions at the higher octave to be able to stay there. And that's what Phoebe was talking about. You really have to evaluate, then you have to go back. Evaluate really everything in your life. Who are you hanging out with? What are your thought processes? What are you allowing this shift to really take hold of you and pull you to that higher level? Or are you still trying to make choices that are not in alignment with this higher shift? Also, I do want to warn people that sometimes you can feel a little lightheaded. Yes, if you're feeling lightheaded, have it checked out by the doctor. But if there's no physical reason for it, sometimes when you're integrating this new level, you can feel a little bit lightheaded. Now, Phoebe, when it's simply reaching a higher octave not enough, why do we need to understand what can pull us out of that?
Oh, absolutely. That's why you have to become very familiar with your triggers and your shadow work and things that have the potential to pull you back into that lower state of consciousness. It is very important to become very aware of those things and, implement the tools and modalities to save yourself from going backwards. There's a lot of things that you can do. I personally do breath work, meditation, I do somatic healing practices. Just to kind of like maintain this vibration if I ever feel like I am triggered or if I ever feel like I am self-sabotaging, which I do sometimes.
We all do. We
Yeah,
all do that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Or given to temptation. There's a lot.
Again, we all do that.
Oh yeah, it's a part of life. It's a part of being human and being human, you have to always consciously be choosing to evolve forward and navigating away from the things that can bring you back down. And it's never going to end. It will always constantly be there. And so that's why this journey is quite beautiful because you're fully in control of it and it's all
Yeah.
up to you. And there's no shortcuts. It all is determined on how you live your life and how far you're willing to go in order to get to, the state of being that what you are looking for.
There are no shortcuts, people. Did y'all hear that? Also, I want y'all to understand what Phoebe just said when she said, she took it. Yeah, she said, yeah, I self-sabotage. I do too. So I don't want anyone here to think that this is a perfect journey where there are no mistakes made. Please give yourself grace. And Phoebe has some habits that she uses to help stay in that state. Her and I meet also. So, find what works for you. Same thing. I do a lot of the same things Phoebe was talking about, meditation, yoga, pay attention. And this is for me, not for everyone, but I do talk a lot when you come to mentor, take one of my classes about there's mental energy, physical energy, emotional energy, and spiritual energy. You have to take care of all of those. Pay attention to what you're putting in your body. Pay attention to what you're putting in your mind. Pay attention to how others are affecting your emotions. So, really be mindful and aware of what's going on in your life. And above all, give yourself grace, give yourself mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Phoebe, what are some common patterns and habits or beliefs that you think people carry that might sabotage their ability to maintain that new vibration?
Well, everybody is unique. So I think everybody has their different triggers and things that can pull them back into a lower vibrational state. But I feel like there are some universal things that everybody kind of goes through, which is, especially in this day and age, it can be comparing your life to someone else's, not feeling like your life is adequate compared to whoever else you see, especially, on social media. This is a big thing. Um, I think that there is just a lot of like lower vibrational feelings that it is so normal to feel. But I think being aware of them when you feel them and acknowledging them and understanding like, oh, this is my ego speaking. It's not my higher self. It's not who I truly am. I think once you really integrate your higher self into the way that you think and speak and react to external situations in your life. I think once you're able to do that, it definitely helps you navigate and understand and cope with a lot of the things that happen that are unfortunately out of your control. A lot of things that happen, you may feel like it's out of your control at times, and
Mhm.
it really is the way that you react to these unforeseen circumstances
Right.
that really proves that you are now on this higher timeline. It really shows, and like I saw this little meme or something on Instagram where it's like true spiritual growth is not done on a yoga mat or in like a somatic practice like breathwork or meditation. It is when you are actively facing one of your triggers right in front of you and you're making a choice of, am I going to let this sabotage me or am I going to choose the higher route and overcome this? And then as you overcome it more and more, it just becomes a part of your life and a lifestyle. And then boom, you've mastered it. And so
Absolutely.
that's like by far one of my favorite things about this life is confirming that, okay, great, I've mastered that. Like I overcame that and you're never going to run out of things that you can overcome in one lifetime, but like being able to say for certain I used to struggle with this and now I don't anymore. It doesn't trigger me anymore because I've done the healing. I've overcome that. It's very special and you should be very proud of yourself if you're able to say that you've overcome something like that.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. That was an excellent answer. I really liked how Phoebe was talking about there is a common, I can't remember who said it, but there's a quote out there that we can't control our circumstances. We can only control our reaction to them.
Hmm.
When you're on a spiritual journey, it doesn't give you a path of no challenges or rainbows and butterflies the whole way. What it does allow you to do is navigate it in a manner that doesn't steal your joy.
Hmm.
When you realize so in my mentorship, I mentor people a lot. And something that I find a lot of people struggle with are, why did such and such treat me that way? Why did such and such treat me that way? Because there's free will. And if someone's free will is to be a jerk, then that's their free will.
Hmm.
You can't control that. But what you can control is your reaction to it. Like, what is your boundary?
Hmm.
So, do you have a lot of friends, Phoebe, that struggle with boundaries? Because I have noticed that a lot of my clients struggle with boundaries and how to set them in a loving manner. You can absolutely set boundaries in love.
Hmm. I would say I used to. I have very carefully chosen my inner circle at this point in my life, and so nobody that I keep close to me now ever pushes my boundaries, which I'm very grateful for. But absolutely, like back in, 5, 6 years ago, I'd love to be friends with everybody, and so like I
Yes.
had a very much larger circle than I do now. And my boundaries were pushed almost daily, and that's why I had to start cutting people off and really um, evaluating my relationships in a very
Yeah.
specific manner to see um, if it's really actually good for me to continue on, and if the friendship is actually sustainable. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think having very clear boundaries with who you are and knowing what you will accept and what you won't and being very firm with that is extremely important, for anybody to see and to set for themselves. And
Mm.
so yeah, boundaries play a big part. I think bigger than anybody can even really imagine.
I
Because
think,
essentially it's showing how much you love yourself.
yes, I was going to say, I think that Phoebe, what you do really well, and what I've seen you really, just since the time I've known you, get so much better at is setting boundaries. And you do such a phenomenal job of setting them in love. Like sometimes when people say, oh, boundaries, they envision, I'm just cutting that person off, not talking to them anymore. That's not really what a boundary is.
No, because you're gonna regret that later on.
Right,
You're gonna
right.
you're gonna think back like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I feel kind of bad about that now.
Exactly. So again, that would be something that I would call, if you're setting that kind of boundary, that's not something that's going to affect your vibration and being able to maintain that higher octave, because you want to go back to your motive. You always want anything that you're going to keep you at a higher octave to have love behind it. So
Absolutely. And
setting a boundary in love is possible.
absolutely. And the people who are meant to be in your life will always respect that. And they will
Yes.
always like don't ever think that someone that doesn't respect your boundaries needs to be in your life. It doesn't matter who it is. If someone is not respecting your boundaries and you're being very clear about it, truly, like I don't think that person is really meant for you. And I think you should move on. And I
Yes.
really believe that everybody who is in my life currently, and I would hope anybody else like that I'm friends with or that it's in my circle, like I hope that they are also surrounded by people who love and respect and care for them and also their boundaries as well. It's very important.
Right. I think that's so beautiful. And Phoebe, of course, if anyone's watching this, we are from different, I'm in my 50s, Phoebe's in her 20s. So, no, that is what she just said is something that is applicable no matter what age you are. Set those boundaries in love, and if people are meant to be there, they will. And if they can't handle it, then they were never meant to be there.
Yeah. And at any stage in life and also in any stage of the relationship, it could you could be friends with someone for 20 plus years, you know,
Yes,
and if you need to set a boundary, if something's been bothering you that entire time, you haven't said anything, you need to say it.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think it's important, Phoebe, is you're single, so you're in, dating and doing that types of things. And I think it's important for young women to understand how to set boundaries with males also when they're dating.
Hmm.
I've seen so many people that want to be in a relationship so badly, or they want a certain person so badly, they will let their boundaries be trampled just to be for the sake of that relationship.
Yeah, never compromise your boundaries for somebody else, especially in romantic relationships. Because if you do that at the beginning, you're not even being authentic in the relationship right off the bat. You're not even being that authentic person that you need to be in order to maintain a healthy relationship. So you're doing yourself such a deficit by starting a relationship in that type of way. And I understand it happens a lot. You know, people can be pushy and you just be like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, whatever, like, and just go along with something. But the minute you start doing that, is the minute that starts becoming the normal thing. And you can't really come back after you've already allowed someone into your life doing something that you're uncomfortable with. I mean, you
Hmm.
always can. You can always set boundaries, but it just becomes a lot more complicated if you have already allowed this person to do something that you actually aren't okay with. So
Right.
just be very
Yes.
firm in the get-go. And if you're with the right guy, he will respect that always.
Yes. Yes.
The
Yes.
right person for you will always respect and love and care and want you to voice how you feel and want you to voice what you're comfortable with and what you're uncomfortable with.
Thank you. Thank you. I could not have put that better. Perfect. Well said, Phoebe. Well said. Now, we're going to switch gears a little bit. How do you think past wounds and unresolved emotions act as hidden anchors, pulling us back to our old vibrational states?
You know, I think past wounds and hidden triggers and things like this, like they're always kind of there in the distance. It's just how far do they get from you? For me, I'm always aware, I'd like to think that I'm aware of what triggers me. And so even if I feel like I have overcome something, it can always still kind of be in the shadow and show up in different ways, in different forms. And so it's always something that you just have to be very aware of, I
Mhm.
think. And it's very important. To always continually be working on that. Don't just say, "Oh yeah, that's done." Like it's always going to be there. You can heal from something, but you can still acknowledge its existence. And so I think it's very important, since everybody is unique and they have their own triggers and they have, their own unique abilities as well. It's always important to keep those things in mind in all aspects of life, no matter what.
Yes, thank you. Yes. I've recently, Phoebe already knows this, but everyone else, I've recently written a book with a colleague called Awaken Your Path, and it's on releasing triggers. So now, just I want to warn anyone that if you're writing a book on something like releasing triggers, guess what's going to be happening to you as you're writing this book and in your when you're in the publication process. Can you guess, Phoebe, what happened? Oh, she's showing it. Thank you, thank you. So can you imagine what happened during that process? Any guesses, Phoebe?
I'm sure a lot of little things got brought up that you thought were put to rest a long time ago.
Right, exactly. Um, so just be aware that when you're trying to make a change in the world, the universe will say, "Are you really ready?" And
Yeah.
so by putting this book on triggers out there. Oh my goodness, things that I thought I had dealt with. And, I had pulled back, I don't know, 20 layers to a trigger. So I thought, oh my goodness, I have so laid that sucker to rest. We're 20 layers deep into it. Oh no. Mm-mm. It just presents itself. And I love the way Phoebe put that in a different way.
Hmm.
So there was something that especially happened right before it was published with my colleague. And again, it was an emotion. I don't usually get angry. I don't usually get upset the way I was. And so in that moment, I had to sit with, wait a minute. This is not about my colleague at all. This is totally about me. And that incident happened when I was about 5 years old that I thought I had put to rest, but clearly I have not. So I think it's important to be aware of what the triggers feel like so that because you will always be triggered. I want
Hmm.
everyone to give themselves grace and mercy that those past wounds and those past emotions that have had a negative impact on you, just be prepared. Don't think that you're going to be perfect and not have them come back up. Just be prepared for them.
Yeah, I'd also like to add, you will always be triggered and you will always be triggering other people, whether you realize it or not. So let's be clear, this is like a very synchronistic way of life here. It's like, yes, you will be triggered, but you will also be triggering other people, no matter who you are, no matter if you're the best person in the whole world, you think you do everything right. That will trigger other people. You know why? Because other people are unhealed and they're gonna see you in a way that they don't see themselves. And people are always gonna unfortunately see your success as their failure. And so it goes both ways regarding triggers. So just, yeah,
Yeah, that's so
understand that.
true. Thank you for
Yeah,
bringing that up
I
because
just wanted to point that one out.
yes, no, it's so true. You can go through life checking all the boxes that society thinks that you should check and just be this perfect person and do all those things. And that in itself is going to trigger someone.
Right.
So the best thing you can do is show up in this world as the best version of you.
Your most authentic self.
Yes, yes, yes. So the
And
whole, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna add, and when people are triggered by that, make sure that that does not affect how you perceive yourself and keep going. Don't
Yeah.
ever let anybody's opinions of you or anything that someone could say about you affect how you feel about yourself. If you are confident in yourself, if you know yourself, if you're actively working on your shadow work and really evolving through this lifetime, don't let anything external ever affect
Mhm.
who you are as a person. Stay to your authentic self always.
Yes, I was just working with one of my mentor clients this morning on a body of work that they're trying to get out on into, the masses. And there was a little hiccup in it. And in discussing it with her, the hiccup was that it's very personal. And so she's very afraid. And it was something that was working in her life. She didn't even realize it until I started asking the questions that she's afraid once people see her authentic self and who she really is, that then they're going to judge her. Because when she was growing up, any kind of form of weakness or compassion was used against her.
I think everybody struggles with this in some way, shape, or form.
Yes, it is huge. So,
Very real.
yeah, it might not be in the way my client this morning was struggling with it, but I think we all do. I did whenever I came out of the psychic, what I call, or what we in my industry call the psychic closet. Um, and I think of all the thousands of people I've helped and really, help them see themselves and move past triggers and develop more self-love. I never would have done that had I listened to the naysayers. And don't think that I wasn't concerned. And don't think I didn't lose half of my Facebook friends when that happened,
Hmm.
because I come from a very strict Christian kind of background.
Hmm.
So, but and I'm so much happier now.
Once you're able to accept that and break free from the perceptions of others, it's just so liberating.
It
Like
is.
it is a feeling that is indescribable, truly. Um, and I wish that for every single person in this world to be able to
I do too. Can you imagine, Phoebe, a world where everyone showed up as their authentic, beautiful self?
everything would be much more harmonious. That's for
Isn't that the truth? Now, what
Absolutely.
role does self-awareness play in identifying the root causes that could destabilize your growth?
Yeah, self-awareness
Right?
is, I would say, the most important piece to this entire puzzle,
It is. I
because
agree.
you're
Yes.
able to recognize everything in life. You're able to recognize your strengths, your weaknesses, your triggers, what makes you who you are. That is self-awareness. It
Mhm.
helps you recognize your soul. It helps you recognize your soul's purpose. Helps you recognize the soul contracts that you created before we came down here to accomplish. And um, yeah, I mean, being self-aware, it it is not without experiences that shape you into who you are and shape your mindset.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think everybody should explore their passions in life, explore what excites you, explore what ignites this fire in your soul. Because that essentially just helps you become more familiar with your true self and helps you become way more familiar with your purpose in life. And I believe everybody has many different purposes in life,
I agree.
and you have so many that you can hone in on and truly um, uh, become familiar with and then give out to the world. But I think, yeah, self-awareness is the root of becoming
Yes.
yourself.
Yes. 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 Whenever people was talking about, getting into your passions, what's creative to you, I tell people that all the time. If I'm mentoring someone or they're coming to me for advice and they're feeling stuck, what are you passionate about? It could be sitting staring at the clouds. Are you passionate about that? Do it. Is that hiking? Do it. Is it cooking? Do it. Because once you get your energy moving,
Hmm.
then that's going to roll. Can you make a living out of staring at the clouds? No, but I bet if you're passionate about doing it, you're going to have some really good drop-in ideas while you're staring at those clouds. Same
Absolutely.
thing. Can you make a living off of being going hiking? I don't know. Maybe you decide to be a tour guide. But if that's not it, you will have some great ideas dropping in while you're doing what you're creative, because if that's your passion, if that feeds your soul, that is what's going to open you up to information from the other side and give you clarity. Being self-aware is all about clarity.
Hmm.
When I was triggered with my colleague, it was that self-awareness that allowed me to gain clarity
Hmm.
on what was actually wasn't her at all. It was something that happened when I was 5.
Hmm.
Poor thing, she's paying the price for it. Um, but yeah, I owned it right away. So because of the book, I was able to, within 5 minutes, I was like able to identify it, walk through it, and move on. I felt great on the other side of it. I mean, it's not always so quick, but being self-aware just allows you to know yourself and to understand what your superpowers are. I always talk to people like, what is your superpower? We all
Hmm.
have it. And
All
frequently we don't realize it because we live with it. We don't
hmm.
realize our next door neighbor can't do the same thing just as great. So
Right.
thank you
Exactly.
for that.
Hmm.
Now, are there any telltale signs or red flags that someone is about to drop out of a higher octave they've moved into?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody has their own things that they deal with on a daily basis. But you know, I feel like you can recognize when you are about to self-sabotage, give into temptation, compare
Mhm.
yourself to someone, become jealous of something. And again, it really is just going back to the self-awareness of being very familiar with these feelings and knowing that they don't serve you and knowing that they don't serve a purpose in this life. If you're on the path of ascension, which we all are, whether we
Right.
know it.
We hope everyone is.
But yeah, I mean, just really becoming familiar with these things, I feel like is the best thing that you can do. And then doing tools and modalities in order to break that state, which comes to mind. There is something literally called break state, where if you're feeling triggered, if you're feeling an emotion that is not beneficial for you, but everybody has them on the daily at all time, or many times. If you're able to recognize this, then you can basically, this is how you do it. You go into a different room, so you acknowledge the trigger. You go into a different room, so you change your environment.
Hmm.
And then you do a box breath for 90 seconds, which is in for 4, hold, out for 4, hold.
Hmm.
So you repeat that for 90 seconds, and then you actually light a candle or listen to a familiar song, and then kind of like close it out in that way. So the candle or the song is that closer, is that, I'm, actively overcoming this, or I have overcome this.
Right.
And then hopefully you've kind of like broken that state of that trigger and you're able to move on and kind of like carry on without going down that spiral.
Absolutely. That's a great tool. And I want to, so Phoebe mentioned a box breath. So I want everyone to think about a square is a box and it has even sides. So in for, hold for, out for, wait for, four. So that's what a box breath is. There are so many different, and I want to give everyone what Phoebe said was great. And I want everyone to know that even if you don't, you're in a meeting at work and you're being triggered, so you can't say, oh, well, wait a minute, let me go do this box breath. Know
Right.
that there are tools and find one that works for you. Everyone is different. Every single person is different. Um, so find what works for you. I love what Phoebe was talking about, especially if I'm home or something and I have the opportunity to do that. I used to be a very bad emotional eater. I know that's hard for people to understand because I've always been relatively thin, but it was a vicious cycle in my life. And so learning triggers and how to release them helped me really navigate that instead of going and eating my feelings away, being able to process them. Again, me and a colleague wrote the book, Awakening Your Path, has a list of questions on it that you can ask, like 10 questions, and you can process triggers in the moment. Find something that works for you. If you're listening to this, there's so many different modalities. Phoebe's mentioned breath work several times. Breath work is excellent for breaking that cycle.
Hmm.
So, whenever you're whenever you're out in public and you're finding yourself triggered and you can't, do the box breath and all that, what do you tend to do, Phoebe?
I tend to acknowledge it and say in my mind, like, okay, I'm acknowledging that I'm triggered right now instead of reacting or instead of doing something that I may regret later. Um,
Right?
Yes. I'm very real with myself and say, okay, girl, you're triggered right now. Like this person's, kind of pissing you off. And I very much just say, okay, well, my ego is being triggered. It's not, my higher self is saying, okay, this too shall pass. And then I lean into my higher self. I lean into my intuitive knowing that um, this trigger is simply just something, happening in the present, and it's most likely not going to affect me even, a couple minutes later. It's just what's
Right.
going on in this very moment in time. But there's a lot of times during the day where you are triggered by little things and things that you'll never be able to control. So it just really is the only thing that you can control is how you react to them and how you how you associate with these things. And I will say, in my life, I've done a little like experimentations where I choose to overlook the triggers, or if someone's, in front of me annoying me, or if something happens that's just really unfortunate, I really try to not pay it much mind. I just say, okay, that happened and I'm moving forward. And I will say, as I have integrated this into my life, I have gotten a lot less triggered and I've had a lot less things happen that would have potentially triggered me.
Mhm.
So it really kind of goes into this flow
Yes.
um, of 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 once you pay no mind to your triggers and once you say, you know what, I'm not actually going to let this affect me or affect my energy, then you're kind of overcoming that and you're healing yourself in a way from, these little things that happen day to day, and they happen a lot less from um
Yes.
what I've experienced.
Because your vibration is changing. So
Mhm.
vibrations are like entrainment.
Right,
Whenever
right,
you put two tuning forks together, they will start vibrating at the same. So you're changing your vibrations, so you're changing what you attract. Also,
right.
want to mention that Phoebe has now said, I several times she has mentioned in this podcast, I acknowledge my feelings. I acknowledge that is so important. It's so important to not pretend like you're not angry or to just tap it down and say, oh, that never happened. It's in the acknowledgement of it and telling yourself, oh, yeah, I'm feeling that. And now I'm choosing to handle it in a different way.
Hmm.
Because it's when you just tap them down that then one day you explode over and do something you regret
Hmm.
over something that really did not
Yeah.
in that way.
And I will say, if it's someone that is triggering you, you can also have an open and honest conversation with them and let them know, hey, when you do this, it bothers me. You can actually take like action, and
Yeah.
autonomy, and actually fix or try to fix a trigger that is imposed by another person. So you can actually kind of like do that as well. And I think that's also very healthy. And that's also, going back to the boundary setting, that's showing your boundaries. It's saying, hey, I'm not
Yes.
okay with this, and I don't like when you do this. That's also something that can assist you with that as well.
Now, I'm going to ask you something that is very generational because in my generation, like I said, I'm significantly, I think, yeah, I have kids older than you, Phoebe.
No way, I actually didn't know.
Which is so funny because we're good friends. But so in my generation, women were really taught to not really give pushback, to not speak, to not rock the boat.
Mhm.
How has do you notice the same thing in your generation, or has it changed for your generation?
I think it's definitely changed and evolved in my generation. I personally don't feel that way. I don't feel limited in that type of way. I'm
Mhm.
sure other women do, so I'm not going to speak for everybody. I think I've just been able to come into a healthy energy with myself and with my boundaries and what I'm willing to accept and what I'm willing to not.
Mhm.
And I think everybody is on their own journey of that. And so depending on where you are in that journey of self-discovery and boundary setting, that's where you're going to land regarding that. But I think if we've gotten a lot more progressive as women in this day and age. And so I would hope that women get, you know, don't struggle with that as much as they used to in the past. But
Mhm.
it is very specific to each person's situation and who they're surrounded by as well. It's a very external,
Yeah.
has just as much as to do with who you are, but versus, what's going on in your life and who you're associating with and who
Yeah.
you're sharing your energy with.
I would agree with that. It is very, what kind of, again, the book we wrote a whole chapter on biases, like the lens through which you view the world
Hmm.
and your worldview. And, that is so ingrained in how we were raised
Hmm.
that we don't even realize it. How we were raised, the city we grew up in, our teachers, all of that. And so
Right.
what Phoebe was speaking on is so true that it has a lot to do with what values and what you were taught growing up and what even your town, what the
Right.
society was feeling.
Right.
Phoebe, I want to thank you for being here today. There's so many more questions we didn't get to. We're going to have Phoebe back to finish discussing this, but thank you so much for being here today. I so appreciate your insight. For everyone watching, please go follow Phoebe on Instagram. It's Phoebe Richmond. I will have it in the verbiage of this podcast. Thank you for being here today, Phoebe.
Thank you, Christy.